Our next segment is a series of different use cases of large, medium, and small enterprises and PSUs. Sit back and hear from them on how they embark on their cloud journey and the impact it has created for their business and citizen services. Coming first in this segment is a discussion on the topic Reinventing Business with a Successful Cloud-Led Transformation. Moderating this discussion is Ajay Menon, Managing Director and Cloud First Lead, Advanced Technology Center, India, Accenture. He has extensive experience in the technology industry, working with clients in North America, Europe, and growth markets. He and his team is responsible for providing deep specialization, solution architecture, and service delivery on our core cloud-first offerings. Joining Ajoy is Atanu Pramanik, Joint President and CIO, Hindalco Industries; Baiju Joseph, Chief Technology Officer, Future Generali India Life Insurance Company; and Shankarsan Banerjee, Chief Information Officer, RBL Bank. Pleasure to have you all join us this afternoon. Over to you, Ajoy.
Thanks, Justin, and welcome to everyone to this talk, or the topic for the day, which is Reinventing Business with a Successful Cloud-Led Transformation. My name is Ajoy Menon, and I lead Accenture's Cloud First services here at the ATCI, or Advanced Technology Center. And I'm joined by an esteemed panel, which you will hear very soon from. Just to introduce them, Atanu Pramanik, who is the CIO for Hindalco; Baiju Joseph, who is the CTO for Future Generali; and Shankarsan Banerjee, who is the CIO for RBL Bank. Now, just to set the context for the discussion we're going to have today, given that all of us has experienced the pandemic, there's one thing we can agree on, is that change is everywhere. What the pandemic has done for organizations globally, any part of the world, is that they've made the organizations find new ways to embrace their client, service their clients, and also interact with their employees. And more often than not, they have turned to the cloud for the answer. Many surveys actually tell us that 2/3 of organizations will move about 75 to 80% of their workloads to the cloud. It's now an established fact that we talk about the cloud in terms of scalability, resilience, and cost efficiencies. But is that all? The reason we are discussing this topic is because a lot of research coming out now, it points us in a certain direction. Let me pick up one. At Accenture, we did a research very recently with about 4,100 of our CXOs over 16 industries and 25 countries. And the summary of that, of a very long report, is that a group of organizations, say about 15% of them, are using the cloud almost as a launch pad for innovation. They're rechanging their operating model, they're reinventing their businesses, and introducing new products and services using the cloud. And that's the premise we want to explore today. Is cloud the new future operating model for businesses? And for that, as I said, we've put together an esteemed panel who are living and experiencing the cloud. And we will explore over the next 30 minutes or so their views on the same. With that, let me actually get started. The first question would be, and this is to the panel, is, you yourself and your organizations have been adopting digital technologies and the cloud. What has your journey been like so far, right? You've heard the context. It'd be very good to hear from you about what the journey's been like. And maybe we can get started with you, Atanu.
Right, Ajoy, and thanks, NASSCOM, for having me here. All of us are talking of new normal under pandemic, right? But I think for most of us, the journey for cloud did not wait for the pandemic to come in. In our own capacity, almost every organization would have had started the cloud journey, I would say 2 to 3 years back, at least, if some of the specific business verticals would have started a bit earlier as well, right? So what has given it to us is, at the most, or at this current situation, is the speed of movement. If I need to simply try out something in terms of a POC, proof of concept, or let's say I need to implement a quick, let's say, auto rostering software for our people to come to office, right? In the pre-pandemic era, we would have thought of an option of, okay, do I need to build a server and then put it on premise, or an option to cloud? Now, probably that choice is not there at this current moment, and we are all talking of cloud first strategy. I think that's the big change that has happened now.
That's Atanu, really well put. What about your Hindalco's own journey to the cloud? Could you just maybe spend a few seconds on that in terms of how that's been?
Right. So Hindalco, if you know, being a pretty old organization, 65, 68 years old organization, one of the first aluminum kind of manufacturing company in the country. We have a huge variety of machineries as well as legacy of applications as well, right? So from the beginning, at least I can say relate back to around 25 years back, middle of 1990, right? All of those were local distributed applications into the local servers, right? And over the last, I would say, till about 2012, 2013, it was continuing to be that way. And we never had any other reason to change those the way they were, right? And then came the era of gradually when the digitization discussions, digitalization as well, started coming into the discussions of business kind of agility. Then came that what are the technologies that need to be introduced and how we can make them kind of quicker to the market, right? Time to market, what you call. And from those perspectives, the change and shift of on-premise to cloud had started, right? We can always say that in the last 1.5 years, it got a tremendous push. But again, we have our own specific strategy to move a particular workload to the cloud or still keep it on-premise, okay? So, but I can say that in general, we have moved quite a I would say substantial percentage of workloads to cloud, just for business benefit in terms of quicker time to market that application.
Thank you, Atanu. Baiju, would you want to pick it up?
Sure. Great to connect here in NASSCOM platform, and excited to be here with eminent panelists. And Ajoy, thank you for this guiding question. And let me put from my organization perspective, a massive is underway. That's all I can say in one sentence. So I hear from my executives, nothing is greater priority than the digital transformation of business. This is all the one bullet point I see here from my executives. The reasons are very clear. So digital technologies today available actually enable us to be radically do the same thing what we used to do in a newer way, but yet deliver better value to the customer and altering the competitiveness in the industry. So this is very clear. And second area is where I want to bring is the value of cloud extend beyond a total cost, because it is a very preconceived notion that everyone is trying to do it as a cost saving, not at all. So we see it's very, very huge improvements in other areas. Let me see productivity of our staff. I'm talking about technology staff, operational resilience, and the agility which we bring to add features into the products. So for now, some numbers in my organization on 56% of my customer and distribution facing workload is running out of cloud. And let me say, we have been adding 35% faster the additional features have been introduced to the business needs. And now our critical workload, we don't worry about multiple, regional aspects. Earlier we used to worry about DR drills. Today, I don't worry about those 56% workload running on cloud with the DR at all, because it is enabled with single click on a multiple region, replications with always on capabilities. Hours per month configuration times used to have it my service provider, outsourced service provider, now reduced so drastically, with my people who support them has reduced. And security is built in, with all this, earlier used to have separate solution for securities. So where I am trying to come is, in very simple thing, yeah, as this technology changes, okay, or the changes are increasing at rapid pace, we are seeing, or we are being continuously forced to change. So if you are in that wave, okay, we continue to be there. So I normally do summarize in simple words. It is not a digital recession that impel companies to change. It's our fear of missing out. It's fear of missing out actually leading to this change. So one thing I can clearly say from my experience on putting this 56% of workload into the cloud migration is not means cost saving. It's beyond. Please definitely need to look at that.
That's a great point, and I'll come back to you on that point. Let's explore a bit more. So, Shankar, over to you. Shanky, if you could talk through, the journey with RBL and your personal perspective on the topic.
So, my perspective is interesting because I actually grew up cloud native. I did a lot of work in the initial years in e-commerce on businesses that started off on the cloud and, developed on the cloud, and then came back to big industry. In fact, I was in Accenture also for a while. And of course, working with larger companies, many of which were zero cloud. Like I used to be in NSE. NSE was zero cloud at some point. RBL Bank, and when I joined, really didn't have anything much on the cloud. And then I've been working with other companies which have had cloud footprints. But coming from the cloud native world, I had a different viewpoint. One was, firstly, cloud is easier than most people think. People have a fear of the unknown. So people think that cloud is from the regular world, the traditional server world, they used to think cloud is very complex. And the cloud isn't actually as complex as all that. There are certain things you have to look out for. And if you know what to look out for it and plan for it, it isn't particularly complex. So RBL, for instance, when we started our journey, we spent a lot of time planning, but we moved a good chunk of our workloads in less than 40 days to production on cloud. And we are currently about a third of our workloads are on cloud. So, but there are certain important things. One, like Baiju says, it's not really about cost saving. The cost model is different. Here cloud is rent, on-premise is buy. So how it costs out, how it affects your balance sheet, how it affects your financial performance differs from business to business. Banks prefer to buy because cost of capital is very low, so buying is usually more efficient. But at the same time, we don't really want to buy and keep capacity idle, which is what we generally have to do when we are planning on-premise, because on-premise servers take time to deliver. So you have to order well in advance and therefore keep it idle till projections catch up. It's a bit like, is staying at a corporate apartment cheaper than renting a hotel? It depends on how frequently you go there and how often you need to occupy a room. And there is no easy answer. You'll have to model it for your own workload to see if it makes cost sense or not. And then there are many others like DR cost that people fail to account for. There is management cost. On cloud, currently a 3-person team runs my entire cloud setup, which is a 1/3 of my production. Remember, the remaining part of the production is a 300-person team. So there are all those other challenges. The second big trend isn't really about applications moving from on-premise to cloud. It is about services that cloud offers as common services. Office 365 or Google Workspace is probably the largest of them. Many companies have moved out from on-premise office productivity because what is offered on the cloud is far superior to what is offered on-premise. This very conversation is a cloud-based service. There's no way that I could have done this I could have done this easily using on-premise conferencing software. I'm sitting in a car parked in traffic. And on top of that, to build such interoperable video conferencing solutions, all CIOs have tried and torn their hair out. It's just not even simple within your own offices, forget across offices. And these are services that don't really exist unless there is a pervasive cloud. And once they exist, they offer productivity and opportunities that are far beyond what could be offered when you were purely on premise. We have started, for instance, having direct video conversations with our customers, video KYC, something that is very hard to do with a pure on-premise solution. A significant chunk of it is much better done on cloud. These are opportunities that open up, and the best companies use the on-premise to cloud infrastructure as a service part only as the stepping off part.
True.
The real value of cloud comes in cloud native services. And companies that are able to adopt it efficiently benefit a lot. And there are companies in India that are adopting it very efficiently. Loan origination systems, KYC systems, digital data stores, collaboration. A lot of it is become heavily cloud centric and far more capable than it used to be in the world of on-premise.
I think there's so many parts to that, and just anecdotally, when we were growing up, my dad used to work in a central government organization, and they had once a computer come in, right? And we all made a beeline to go and just see it. And your point is so valid. Today, I think the individual has much better computing capability in their hands and ability to take services than actually an organization in many instances, especially if it's a legacy one. So your point of being born cloud native is a really valid one. So I just wanted to go back to you, Baju, and I'll come to each of you individually. One is, you talked about, if I look at the insurance industry, right? Way back in 1996, I used to work with New York Life at that time, and they were actually doing pay as you drive, even at that time, right? As you go along, you collect data and you come up with motor insurance. But the project, and I may have got the company quoted wrong, but at some stage that kind of proposition lost space because there was no space to store data. It ran out of just data. So cloud came back, and cloud was able to solve that problem. But we moved from the whole debate on private cloud to public cloud, and then now we have edge and a whole lot of solutions around that, right? So from your perspective, as a CIO, how do you really look at these technologies, and given the business pressures, what do you really see is happening here, right? I mean, are you focused more on the business transformation or more taken up with the technologies? What would your view be?
I would start with this. Next big thing is in the cloud edge debate, because that is a very relevant, because it's not just about cloud, it's also about edge computing, right? I mean, I will give the simple scenario. The IoT need both cloud and edge to reach its potential.
Correct.
So the predictions in the edge computing market suggest the growth of the edge internet economy is going to be nearly 4 trillion by 2030. That means, so edge access will become hugely important, and for any latency sensitive services, okay? Because like you said, pay as you go, pay as you do services, much 100% need edge computing. You can't really rely on, like today video conferencing still on your bandwidth and edge, scenarios where you have, but this is really a requirement. So the ability to push processing to the edge rather than shipping all data from the edge, put it to the cloud for analytics and bring it back, the decisions is going to be not surviving anymore. Okay. So what cloud and edge computing can do for all of us, or all the new connected devices, our mobile devices which we use, give them the capability to run new services that really on low latencies. So combining that with the rise of 5G, which is going to be, really soon, we will see new possibilities, new products coming out of it, new customer service at the mobile service center, on their mobile, become a dream. It's just we could not dream this in 3 years back. And I'm telling you, in next 2 or 3 years, you will become reality, and you will be really forgetting about cloud discussions. It will be more towards because everything is going to happen that. So in many ways, today you look at you can just Google and search about edge computing versus cloud. It's in spotlight today. So And many companies are investing in any service provider are investing there. But one thing I want to do is Edge is supplementing cloud, not replacing anymore at all, because both need to be there. So what my point here is, when we decide about cloud migrations for people who's not born into the cloud, okay, we need to think first whether this edge intensive or centrally computing intensive. So this primary decisions other than the cost, security, flexibility, performance, count, control, application stack, your delivery spot, all those are there. But the primary decision is going to be, are you going to be in AR, VR services? Are you going to be on edge computing devices or let's say IoTs or something or other? These are the decision maker before you migrating will start happening.
I think that's so well. I mean, we refer to in the same report as talking about, we refer to as continuum of capabilities. So, there's no point in boxing it. I think it's a set of capabilities for organization to exploit. Atanu, coming to you, sorry.
Sorry, Ajay, you guys are well put the Accentures of the world, or all four of you guys are very well put the technical strategies and technical wording together the right way. I don't know.
No, but you put it in the right way because you're experiencing it on a day-to-day basis, right? So that helps. Atanu, coming to you, right? I mean, one of the things, even though we think about a lot of the use cases and we think about B2C, but if you look at your perspective in organizations, what we've seen over the last 12 months and 18 months is a lot of capability that organizations are looking to exploit in terms of how they look at their production processes, how they look at their entire supply chains. Probably, in my view, I've seen that a lot more innovation is going into that area than it used to happen previously, right? And maybe pandemic has helped in terms of relooking at almost all the processes, right? I mean, IoT is one, multiple areas. I mean, is that premise right, Atanu, or what is your perspective of what's changing in that more core processes, not so much the front end part, right?
Absolutely, Ajay. I think maybe manufacturing is probably the last kid on the block in this journey. But I think over the last 3 years or so, I've seen almost every manufacturing entity, and I've been speaking to our kind of fellow CIOs and other folks across the world pretty much, that I don't think that anyone is thinking this as a taboo of connecting my devices and get the data, right? It's pretty much in the action that we are collecting all possible data that, based on a use case, is going to help my production line in terms of, let's say, resiliency, let's say quality, let's say productivity, let's say asset utilization, let's say condition-based monitoring. All of these would not have been possible unless we went into the direction of connecting all the devices through the technologies of your telemetry devices or sensors or whatever you do it, because you have to take care of, in most of the manufacturing entities, is take care of multiple versions and multiple, I would say, generations of machineries, right? Not all of them would be capable of giving you the data as you want, right? So you have to do those kind of retrofitting the telemetry devices to collect those data, right? But having collected that, now comes the interesting part of it, okay? Probably it's connected to cloud, but it's interesting part, how do you look at the data, right? So how do you utilize that data? We are talking in today's world of data democratization, right? Now, if you are collecting data and if you are not able to provide that data to the right person at the right time, at the right kind of quality of data, then all this effort that you are putting into connecting all the devices, putting in IoT on the cloud, time to market and all those stuff will fall flat, right? So taking a cue from Baiju also is, ultimately it's at the end of the day your user or customer satisfaction. User means whenever it's your internal users or your customers or your end customers, either way, the consumers of your application are the best people to judge where you should be, right? And when we are talking of cloud today, and again taking cue from Baiju, whether it is a kind of a combination between cloud and edge, is also a very integral part of this discussion is how good or how bad is your network connectivity at the point of your data source, right? From me, I mean, from my perspective, I can talk of the locations, the districts, the kind of places that we are in today within the country, the mining location that we have. Even normal phone connections do not work very kind of fluently, right? And there we are talking of putting the data into cloud and doing a condition-based monitoring or a production decision making. You can't just do it, right? So cloud will be in its own place. Customer or user satisfaction is on the other side, and all these, rather these two, will only be kind of pretty much practical when you have a good network connectivity to link these two.
Very true, Atanu, very true. And that's where I guess a lot of us are excited on the whole 5G and its possibilities in different ways, right?
Yes. Also, private LTE is another option that people
exactly. Private. I mean, I was on an innovation context this few days back, and one of them actually showcased a last mile open network on
Absolutely.
5G, right? Which is really the way forward.
We are doing it, by the way, POC, we're doing it right now.
Right. So just moving on to you, Shanky, and I think I wanted to explore, I guess, the data part that Atanu talked about, to many things you talked about, which is very interesting from a banking standpoint, right? You talked about disintermediation of your processes. You said if there's a loan processing, there are third-party ecosystem players. And the industry, by and large, is very different with fintechs and a lot of people trying to get that pie of money, right, with payment services, etc. So where does, I mean, the original premise of the conversation saying, can we look to reinvent the businesses, right? How does it fit in the banking world, Shanky?
So banking uses a lot of technology, which is one of the reasons it actually is stuck with a lot of legacy, because the investments happened about 20 odd years ago at a very large scale. And then, it's very hard for us to move away from those investments. So banks have traditionally been the largest users of mainframes, the largest users of private networks, and so on and so forth. And now we are kind of stuck with them. Now that the world is changing around us, we are scrambling to figure out what to do with our mainframe, what to do with our private network, what to do with the way we have done things. Any technology shift essentially is a rethinking of the constraints you work under. So earlier, the constraint on technology used to be resource constraints. CPU constraint, memory constraint, and by far the largest of those constraints was storage. Storage used to be ridiculously expensive at some point. I know, when I was in college, you used to have these huge platters of 1 MB discs, each worth about $1 lakh. Each were 1 MB, and it was like, I think you had to get US Department of Nuclear something permission to get one of those discs. And now, of course, I think at my house, I have 3 terabyte discs lying around. I don't know, sometimes they get sat on and all that. Storage in particular, and that's why data processing has become so much better, not because of CPU. Yes, CPU also has improved quite a bit. But the real constraint removal on data management has been the removal of storage. You have pretty much infinite storage now. Even on-premise storage has become cheap, but as soon as you put it on cloud, it is such an easily accessible, such an infinite resource that you can do things you could never have dreamt of when you were sitting in on-premise. And that's really what fintech has been about. Fintech generates a lot of data. Fintech and others, capital markets generates a lot of data. Banks, of course, generate a lot of transaction data. And it's generating more and more data all the time, because as transaction volumes grow up, as our transactions become smaller and more frequent, data is being generated in larger numbers. We are now tying up data with other activities, insurance activities, social media activities, many other activities at the same time. So our data universe is expanding. And cloud, therefore, has proved very godsend for us, because as we store all this data for processing, cloud has become very efficient. Earlier, we used to store tiny chunks of it and put some of it in archival, in tapes, and if you wanted it, pull it out, or we used to not store it at all. Now we are able to store hundreds of metadata points for every data point that we have. And that has opened us up for analysis, for machine learning, for AI kind of analytics at a level that we could not imagine. Now the challenge is, do we have the people who are able to exploit this capability. Because you see, since we had the constraint, we never invested in this kind of capability. Fintechs, on the other hand, did not know that they were supposed to have that constraint. So they started off with the ability to analyze things at very large scale. So, and that is where banks have been challenged. Banks have traditionally not invested in this kind of massive scale data analytics capability. They've been far more focused on efficient data storage and movement, because that was the costly constraint. And now that we are faced without that constraint, we are trying to get together how business processes at day one itself use data to make straight through decisions. How do I make a decision on underwriting, on risk management, on KYC, on money laundering, all within a 400 millisecond window, so that I can offer it straight through as part of an API call, as opposed to today, you know, banks typically are, you fill up a form and you apply. Then we'll answer a few hours or a few days later, either with more questions or with a yes, no. And then that yes, no in turn falls into a disbursement cycle, which can be another 3-4 days.
Yeah.
That's the traditional. I mean, it's even today, if you want to get a loan, you don't get a loan right away. Even the ones that say instant loans, in most cases, are not instantly disbursed. But fintechs are able to do it that way. When they say instant, they really mean instant.
Instant.
They mean you press a button and the money is in your account.
Correct.
And that's because they are able to use their massive data, this unconstrained data storage, to analyze it in real time and give the answer that I've given 4 hours in 4 minutes. Same answer, same quality of answer. It's not that the quality of answer is any particularly worse. It's just that they are engineered to do it in parallel. So if there are 4,000 applicants, today I batch it up and send 4,000 applicants. Okay, I'll do it every 15 minutes. And then, you know, disbursement will happen in a batch mode. But
So, I think, Shanky, I think is a brilliant point. I mean, I think given all the things, you know, it just generated so many questions in my mind, probably need another 30 minutes for that. But what I would ask you folks to do is, you know, one by one, maybe just take 10, 15 seconds. What would your one advice be to any of your fellow CIOs and folks who are going to embark on this journey? If you could just very quickly, and it could be challenges, it could be things they need to watch out for. If you could just summarize, Baiju, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so I can say the cloud can be a critical element of an organization's competitiveness, but the journey to the cloud is full of technological and strategical challenges, especially if you're not cloud born. That means you have a legacy systems in place and APIs and everything. Please don't treat it as just another data center. Legacy stack to be taken care if you're connecting to legacy data center. Predominantly focus on cloud security, and you have to be bolt on. That means from the day one. Problem, if you don't have an in-house skill, you're going to get, you know, completely, I use different languages, completely getting screwed completely. You must have in-house talent before you embarking on the journey. And the final point, the financial parameters, how much of capex, you know, I call capex percentage you saved because of your OPEX it. How much of OPEX percentage you saving after a year, maybe year 5 onwards or year 3 onwards, and your efficiency you create in the company, how much you should be able to measure at least 5, 6 parameters, which is very coming to my mind is capex, OPEX, ROI. I'm not talking about ROI, which you spend, efficiency created, time to do add features, reliability which you brought into the company, the adaptability or availability which you brought into the infrastructure, some of the parameters which you can clearly win your management over. This must be measured. And the last point, which I want to clearly make, finally, edge computing is on the spot right now.
Sure.
And yes, edge is supplementing the cloud computing, not replacing it, but very important factor of going to be your decision. You know, that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Baiju. Atanu?
Yeah, sure. So Ajay, I think I will kind of the points that Baiju mentioned. I'll probably add a few points from my perspective to those. Obviously, those remain as valued as anything else. But I would say the way we are doing it, a few other perspectives that we're looking at is Number one that we have started looking at when we started moving into the cloud is not cloud all. We started looking at cloud first strategy, right? So you can possibly never go into cloud all strategy because of multiple various reasons, right? So that's number one. Number two is when you decide between your cloud first and cloud all, even within a chunk of or a group of applications, it is again we focused on user or customer experience, and we went into a kind of a format of application affinity, right? That depending on my, let's say, 5 parameters on which I would decide the effectiveness of this application, does it really require it to be on cloud or on premise, right? And the other one that we did also is the integration of a cluster of applications which is required for my transaction processing, including, let's say, ERP, right? Where do I keep them vis-a-vis some a la carte tools or point applications? That's another area that we thought through. That if I need to have a cluster of applications, including ERP, to work together in terms of data sharing and giving me the transaction outputs vis-a-vis all the, I would say, the day-to-day output reports and all the stuff, can I keep them some in cloud, some in on-premise? May not be. So that affinity needs to be thought through. While if I'm looking at independent a la carte point tools for some experience of cluster of users, I can put it on cloud. No questions asked or no interference, right? And also another point I wanted to make very clear to the folks who will be listening to this, who are listening, is you just think cloud in today's world as just an extension of your current infrastructure, right? As Shanky also mentioned earlier, that it is nothing coming from the outside universe, right? The skill sets are being kind of available more and more available on the ground. And also the other point that on this, we need to think not only from an extension of our own infrastructure, let's say for talking of intranet, right? You also need to think through the security features as intranet only, right? So the kind of security features that you're building would have built for your personal private cloud, private data center, if you are connecting cloud through your intranet VPN tunnel or anything else, you should extend all those to your cloud infrastructure as well, because that is not going to be managed by your cloud provider.
True.
Cloud provider will make a peripheral security, not on your application, right? So that's a very, very important point that we wanted to highlight.
No, I think that's a great point. I mean, the last one, it's something that normally doesn't come to mind, but I think it's a great point. So Shanky, over to you to summarize your inputs on, what people should watch out for.
So what people really should watch out for is taking the assumptions of the old world into the new. There are 3 major areas that I've seen again and again. One, people measure success based on previous parameters. That they measure success, for instance, by storage efficiency, which is meaningless if your storage is nearly free. But that's often how, in the old world, in on-premise, you measured it because you had a fixed amount of storage, you measured it that way, and it was very effective. So you took the same measure and put it on cloud, and therefore you make all the wrong decisions. And this again happens across the board. Storage is just the example I'm giving, but it happens in a lot of different things. It is very important to understand that the cloud is a new paradigm. It is not just a larger computer. It is not like you have 10 servers on-premise and you have 10,000 servers on Amazon, and therefore it is, you're 100 times bigger. Just like a car is not a faster cycle. Yes, it is faster than a cycle, but it is also a lot more. It can carry goods, it can carry more passengers, it can provide, a car has provided an economy that a cycle could never have done. And it has therefore a lot of limitations also, which are different. That's the part we must be aware of. The constraints, so that, as I said, 3 things. One is you must take your success measurements carefully. You can't use old world success measurements to measure the cloud success. And in many cases, if you do that, you will end up with either absurd answers or very self-limiting answers. Second is it's a paradigm shift. You must understand the benefits of using the services on the cloud and not, you have 100 other things and not just the thing you transferred from on-premise to cloud. How does that 100 other things change your world? And this is where, for instance, banks versus fintechs. Banks tend to do what they do, it's just that they now do it on cloud. Fintechs say, okay, I have this cloud, can I do 100 different things? And they often do things that banks never thought of doing. The third is cloud is easier than you think. In many cases, not every case. There are certain things that are harder. Security, for instance, is a little bit harder. Or rather, it is quite different, and then that's why you have to learn how to do it. But it is easier than you think it is. Because we imagine it to be the unknown, we think of it as very difficult, and therefore we don't want to shift. The risk calculation goes wrong. And you shift only when you're forced to shift. That time, because you're shifting in a hurry or because somebody else has told you to shift and you have no inner conviction, you often get things wrong. But cloud is much easier than you think. I mean, 21-year-olds in a startup are able to do it. Why are you, an experienced IT manager, not able to do it?
So, Shanky, I think that's, at this stage, when we come to the end, I'm supposed to really, as the moderator, summarize it and kind of somehow prove that business reinvention is actually the key to cloud transformation, or really the end goal. But I think you folks did it so eloquently for me, and I take away the last part you said. It is not, a car is not a faster cycle. I mean, that's a brilliant statement, and cloud is not as difficult as one makes it out to be. But I think, thank you very much, my fellow panelists. I think you put so much of light on the topic and really put the debate really where it is. Really, cloud is a new paradigm, and it is a way to really reinvent your businesses. We do have technology constraint and a continuum of technologies available. But, I guess what I see from all three of you is that you're taking this journey, embracing it, and taking your organizations ahead with it. Thank you very much, and thank you for sparing the time. And thank you, NASSCOM, for giving us this platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ajoy, and the leaders for that very insightful session. And like Ajoy rightfully said, it's such an interesting subject, and with the kind of experience represented by our panelists, I'm sure we could do another 1 hour very easily. But just the same, thank you, Ajoy, and the leaders for wrapping up on time.